here I was, this business owner, had all this going on, and now I couldn't think right. I couldn't speak right. And I remember looking out that window and, seeing all the beautiful colors and stuff. It was a fall time. And just thinking, what now?
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 164 of the Strokecast. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Modus Nova. To find out if Modus Nova can help you recover the use of a stroke-affected limb, visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. And by the fine folks at Like Minded. To find out if Like Minded can help you live your best post-stroke life, visit strokecast.com/Like Minded. After his stroke in 2010, Keith looked great. I mean, you'd never know he had a stroke. But as many folks in this community know, those are some of the most frustrating, well-meaning things that people will say to stroke survivors. My own visible disabilities did manage to spare me of that experience. What wasn't apparent to the people around Keith, though, was the life-threatening depression that stroke left him with and the cognitive challenges that would force him to leave the company he worked at, owned, and loved. Now, he is working to help other survivors in Central Oregon and around the world to thrive in this new life they are a part of. And just as a brief content note, in this episode, we do have a brief discussion of suicide and suicidal thoughts. So keep that in mind as you choose to listen further. Now, let's meet Keith Taylor. Keith, thanks so much for joining us on the show this week.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Bill. Thank you for having me. And I've seen a lot of your stuff. You're doing fantastic, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun, and it keeps me out of too much trouble, or at least keeps me from getting caught. So that's a win.
That's right.
So I mean, we were able to initially connect through this broader community of survivors and stroke support here in our beautiful Pacific Northwest in the upper left corner of the United States. What was your life like before your stroke?
Well, I was a business owner. We were running a multi-million-dollar company, and things were going well, just like it does in any business. You're limited on time. You're working your tail off just to try to make ends meet, and I had a plan put together really that was, get through the next, 15 years of that and retire in a good position, and was just working my tail off. Loved my family very much, still do. Love working. Of course, we worked like crazy. I water skied. I did a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah, life was just going along fine.
One of the things you mentioned there, that is such part and parcel of being a business owner. You talk about, like, say, working your tail off to make ends meet, and it being a multi-million-dollar business in sort of the same sentence there. And I think a lot of folks, when they hear that together, it doesn't that doesn't make sense to a lot of folks. If it's multi-million dollars, why is it working so hard to have to make ends meet? I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure, I'd love to. So everybody has this concept that when you grow a company and your sales are, in the multi-millions, as ours were, that everything is peachy king and everything is going great. And in actuality, if you're still continuing to grow a company, you have to put all the profits back into that company in order to give you the money that you need to grow, to continue to hire new people, to get product, to, all those things. And so people don't understand that running a multi-million-dollar company, typically, I'm going to say, takes a lot of energy, a lot of dedication, a lot of work. And it's not a 9-to-5er, that's for sure.
So you're going along. The company is doing well. You've got this 15-year plan, and then you have your stroke. So what happened that day?
I woke up. I was getting ready to actually travel to your neck of the woods. I was going up to Seattle. I was the sales manager of our company. And so I was getting ready to head to Seattle, and I just felt off. Something was not right, and I couldn't focus. And I ended up, Bill, taking a nap. I never took naps, as a business owner and all that. So I laid down, and the next thing I know, my wife gets home from work, and I'm still in bed, and she checked on me and stuff. Everything seemed okay, and I had dinner in bed and all that. And then the next morning, she worked really early, so she left super early for work and checked on me. Everything seemed okay. I was still in bed, and then she left, and I got up and showered. I got ready. I was getting ready to go, and then I get a phone call. I always talk to my nephew early in the morning, and then my business partner. So my nephew called me early. I was talking to him. He's like, "What the heck is wrong with you?" he said, there's something going on. And I was just kind of dumbfounded. I don't know what you're talking about, And then he said, "Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back." And so then my business partner called me and had a similar experience. And the next thing I know, my wife got home from work and took me to the hospital. I went to 3 different hospitals, Bill, because I have a rare disease. It's called HHT. It is hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia.
That's impressive. I don't know that I could have said that before the stroke.
I hear you. I've practiced many times.
There's a lot of things that are going on there. First of all, I think as many folks who've been in this world for a while hear that story and they're like, already you're out of the 24-hour window where a lot of the treatment can happen, and outside that 3.5 hour window anyway. But since it's unlikely to be ischemic, that's kind of moot anyway. The other thing is you've got this whole day planned, and I imagine your business partner was like, "Keith, what the heck? Didn't you have meetings yesterday in Seattle? Why are people saying you didn't show up?"
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose the good news, Bill, is that I would show up unexpected. Typically, I might have 1 or 2 meetings scheduled, but most of the time I was calling on shops, and I would just walk in. So it wasn't that much, but that's a good point. And I know that my business partner was, it was a tough battle.
When your nephew called you, were you just slurring your words, or were you just not speaking comprehensible English to him, even though it sounded fine to you?
I think the latter is the case. I don't recall slurring my words. We haven't talked a lot about that. I think that I just wasn't making any sense. I was probably jibber jabbering about anything. It's funny, Bill, because when I went to the hospital, and you know how they start asking you a bunch of questions and all that. I mean, I could not remember, and I had a long period of time where I could not remember dates and names and all that kind of stuff. They were asking me questions. I thought it was hilarious. I was answering these questions and it wasn't making any sense at all. So,
because sometimes all you can do is laugh.
I know. True.
So you get into the first hospital, and do you remember how long you were there, or what their reaction was, aside from just doing the first level neuro questions of what's happening in this picture, who's the president, where are you?
I went in and had, the CAT scans and all that kind of stuff done at that hospital. They sent me to another hospital in Portland up on the hill there, and I was there for a day and a half, and they discovered what the problem was, and then I was sent to OHSU to have surgery and all that stuff.
So what is this HHT disease? It sounds like it manifested as just a brain bleed causing the stroke.
It's like your blood vessels don't have capillaries on them, and the blood passes through without these capillaries. And so basically that's what it is. And so your capillaries and your veins and stuff they're not integrated correctly within your system. And so they had to go in. When I went in and had surgery, I've had to have it twice because they go in and they actually cauterize inside you any of these bleeding vessels.
So this is something that is going to require ongoing follow-up as these conditions just keep persisting since it is hereditary.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to mention on this, if nosebleeds are a true symptom. So, if there's children or even adults that get a lot of nosebleeds, you should go get checked out, and you should ask about HHT because it's something that wasn't known for a long time. When I went in, that's when we discovered that we had it, and a huge part of my family has had it. If it skips a generation, then it's done. But if it stays with that generation, it can be handed down. So like my granddaughter has it, but going backward, when we found out that we had it, everybody in my family started getting tested. And we discovered that on my mom's side of the family is where it came from. And I actually have a niece who at the time was only like 5-6 years old. And when they discovered she had it, she had a huge brain bleed. And she's been in 3 times now and had brain surgery to stop it.
Wow. Nosebleeds are such an interesting thing. And we don't often think about having to get that checked out, but that's a very important thing to follow up on. In my case, nosebleeds are part of my stroke story as well, because we go back to a year and a half, 2 years before my stroke. Over the Christmas holidays, I was 3,000 miles away at my mother's house. I started having significant 30-minute nosebleeds every other day.
Oh my gosh.
And it turned out in my case, it was due to high blood pressure, where when I finally got home and checked my blood pressure, it was coming in at 200/160.
Jeez. Whoa.
So, yeah, when you tell the scheduling people at the doctor that your blood pressure is 200/160, they clear the schedule so you can get in the next day.
Do you still have nosebleeds, Bill?
No. Well, it's like been once since then. And it hasn't been an issue since then. But we got the blood pressure under control over the course of the next year. But by then the damage had already been done, and it ultimately led to my ischemic stroke. So if you're getting nosebleeds, definitely get that checked out. That's not supposed to happen, and there are definitely some questions that should be asked.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of doctors aren't familiar with it. It's getting more and more known, but HHT, people call it. So,
yeah. And we'll definitely have more information about HHT in the show notes at strokecast.com/HHT.
Okay.
So as you're going through this then into your third hospital, how long were you hospitalized across those 3?
Not that long. I want to say it was only 4 days across those 3 hospitals.
Wow.
It really wasn't that long, because once they figured out that I had HHT and they went in and did the surgery. And so, I left there and, kind of getting into the whole support thing and, having rehab and that kind of stuff. I didn't get any of that. None of that was scheduled for me, Bill. They just sent me home and that was that. And my wife get this, huge packet of stuff and goes home and was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I can imagine. So it sounds shocking and also equally impressive that they can send you in, find that you have this brain bleed, do this brain surgery, and then all in less than a week, you're good to go.
I know. Here you go. Take a couple of aspirin, call me in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So when you left the hospital then, I mean, what deficits were you living with at that point?
Totally mental. If you were to look at me, Bill, right after the stroke, most people could not tell. And I didn't have a limp. I have some weakness, but you can't tell just by looking at me. So mine was all mental. And man, did I struggle. My wife was home with me for a couple of months, babysitting me and doing what she needed to do. And then she went back to work. And I remember standing in front of this picture window that we had, Bill, and I was debating ending it for myself, because here I was, this business owner, had all this going on, and now I couldn't think right. I couldn't speak right. And I remember looking out that window and, seeing all the beautiful colors and stuff. It was a fall time, and just thinking, what now? I went through some real depression. I'm not a depressed person. I never have been. But at that time, I really went through it. I was wondering if I shouldn't just leave the world. I really struggled. And then when I started going back to work, I went in, part-time. And as business owners, there were 4 of us business owners, actually. And we'd have these meetings every Friday. We would be around a large table, and everybody would have their part. And I was a sales manager, of course, and it'd come to me, and tears would just be running down my face, and here you are, all these, I'll call it macho men, right? But I couldn't communicate. And it was a tough time. It was a tough time for a while there.
To have that sudden change, to go through everything in those 15 years, or 15-year plan is suddenly all up in the air, and figuring out where to go from there, combined with what we know about depression and stroke, is that stroke is definitely a cause of it, not just because of the life change, and not just because of the natural grieving we do for a life that is gone and now has to be rebuilt, but also just because of the damage it does to the brain that leads to this. And it is a huge problem that we're just now starting to see more research about, and more learning about, and more people talking about. And it's great to see some broader conversations around depression and suicidal thoughts happening in the broader community of stroke survivors, as well as in the non-stroke community.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And it's a good thing. We need to continue to do it. And that's what, when I was standing there in that picture frame, it wasn't right that day, but another time I was standing there, I was like, what am I doing? What am I thinking about? There's so many people who are going through this, and they need help. And why can't I begin to figure out that and help these people? And so that's what I did. Going back for a second, Bill, in my company, they wanted me to move down there, and my wife had to leave her job eventually so that we could do that. And we moved back into that community so that I could work in the shop. The next thing you know, a year and a half later, I was let go. Now, I had a disability policy that helped, but I was let go of my own company. And so those are the tough times, right? That we all kind of go through, and not everybody, but a lot of us do. And so it's how do you strap your strings up and figure out what's next in life. What's your purpose? How do you move forward in life? And that's what I believe I help a lot of people with.
Well, it sounds like that. You've got part of a couple of amazing programs. So, I mean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm not kidding. I'm doing very, very great. And thank you for asking that, actually.
Sure. And how long has it been since your stroke?
It has been almost 12 years, unbelievably.
It takes time. And when did you start? How long was it before you started feeling okay again?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for saying that it takes time. And everybody's time is different. None of us have that crystal ball to know. For me, I would say, I'm still growing, Bill. I look at it that way. I look at life as we have to continue to work at ourselves. We have to continue to get better at those things that we know are missing a little bit. I tell people all the time, look, no one has this future cast to know exactly when Bill's going to get better, exactly when Keith's going to get better, and so on. However, if you don't work at it, we'll never get there. And so I challenge people a lot of times to do two things. One is to make notes, journal, do whatever it is that you do so that you have notes that show yourself at point A so that as you continue on, you can see the growth, because the growth is happening. And then, get your attitude right. Know that you can grow. Yeah, you're going to have, excuse me, but you're going to have crappy days. You're going to have hard days, months, weeks, whatever. You can get better if you focus on that. I love to say that when we focus on helping other people like you're doing, Bill, that takes our mind off of our own inabilities and helps us help others. And that's a great thing.
Absolutely. It is so helpful. And at the same time, it has to be paired with that whole thing that the flight attendants always tell us to put your own mask on before helping others. And so it's about striking that balance. But other people is so key to what we're doing in a lot of ways. So what is the stroke survivor community like then in Central Oregon? I mean, for folks who don't know, with Washington and Oregon, two of the states in the northwest corner of the U.S., the bulk of the population is on the very western edge of the states. Then we have big mountain range, Cascade Mountain Range. And then once we get to the central and eastern parts of the states, there's still a lot of people there, but it is definitely not this big urban expanse that you see with Seattle and Portland. And you get a lot of snow. In the winter, you typically get really hot temperatures in the summer. And if you happen to be in Bend, you also get a tremendous exposure to a fantastic microbrew beer community. And it's just absolutely gorgeous down there. But what's the survivor community like then in Central Oregon?
I belong to an organization called Strength After Stroke. They called me, it's been a few years ago, and asked me to get involved. And I won't go down the whole drama of how that all happened. But so I am very much involved. I'm the president of our organization, and it is a nonprofit. It's called Stroke Awareness Oregon. We have a lot of stuff that we do for stroke survivors here in the community. We run very many stroke organizations, stroke support groups. I run 2 of those per month. I also do a men's club that COVID kind of knocked us off a little bit because we were doing these men's club. And then with COVID, we had to do stuff on Zoom, or it's very hard to get it more independent. So you'd see spouses and stuff walking by. So we decided to stop that until we're getting ready to kick them back up. So we do that. We have a caregiver support group. We have a young person's support group that Alicia runs. We're doing a ton. We do a lot with FAST. FAST is the face, arm, speech, and time acronym that we do a ton on that.
Okay, I was going to say, so one of the things that's really interesting there, too, is you talk about having a separate men's group. How, in your experience, does a men's support group differ than from a mixed gender support group?
Being a man, I knew that I went through some real hard times of being home. I didn't want to communicate with my spouse about all the thoughts that were going through my mind about not working, about retirement, about me just doing the things as a man around the house that I should. Now, forgive me, Bill, I'm a little, older. I'll be 60 here pretty quick. And so I still kind of lean that direction. I understand that. But because of those things, I wanted men to be able to sit down and talk about some of those things that are important to them with somebody who can listen and can give input that is critical to continue to grow yourself and not get caught up in all the depressing and negative thoughts.
I think that's really interesting, too, because when we start talking about some of those issues, and a lot of it we can talk about, it's the broader picture of what does our general society expect of men? How does traditional male, female roles, toxic masculinity, all of those different things we talk about play into it. But like you say, when defining yourself by career, that's a part of it. And when you look at one of the other things that's just super common after stroke, the whole question of things like emotional lability and pseudobulbar affect, where in a society that discourages men from crying, suddenly you find yourself just crying at random and inappropriate times and just trying to navigate that world.
Oh my gosh, that is right on the money. And the other thing is, you said something in that sentence that was define yourself by your career or with your career. So many of us get so in tune to that whether it's a stroke, whether it's whatever it is, you get taken out of that. All of a sudden, you have a hard time defining yourself as a person. And these are some of the things that I love to talk to people about because, finding that, man, it's not easy. It takes work. It's hard to figure out, but it can be done. And thank you for even bringing that up, Bill, because that is right on the money with what I believe.
And that's not to say that women don't experience a number of these challenges as well. It's just within the different context of of the roles that are externally imposed upon us. Totally
agree with that. Totally agree. We, we have stroke survivor meetings, and typically they've been predominantly women. And we had them ran with a woman for a while. Now I'm running those. Right now, like last night, we had one of those meetings, and we have typically anywhere from 17 to 25 people or so on our stroke survivor meetings. And we're seeing this shift happen where it's more men. And I'm wondering if I am the influence on that, or if we need to change something or what, because I want women to have that.
It's a different flavor, and regardless, we all have to deal with a change in our role and balancing that with the expectations we've had for decades of our lives and trying to navigate that path. And I think the numbers show us that roughly 55% of strokes do happen to women. So women are more likely to experience a stroke than men, but 45% is not a small number. It is still a huge number.
Exactly. Well, and going back, if we step back now and we talk about the stroke support groups and how we're doing these all on Zoom now, anyone can come in and listen in, and I have tons of speakers, doctors. Yesterday was a great meeting we had about music and how music impacts you after having a stroke. And anyway, we have a lot of that. And so people can join from anywhere now. And I'm going to continue that process because there's so many people that need help. And I know it's Stroke Awareness Oregon, but the support groups are more, they're wider, if that makes sense.
What's interesting is as we've had to move into this virtual environment for support group meetings over the last couple of years, we have seen, or at least what I have seen, and that sounds like you've experienced some of this as well, is that while we have a wider pool of people who are able to attend because we've taken out the challenges of physically getting to the meeting, we also have a lot fewer people participating, which is interesting. And whether that's going to be a technology challenge or whether people just, I don't know. It's one of those things that's just interesting to try to navigate that shift.
I agree with you. On that because we are seeing that. So, yeah.
We've mentioned a couple of things here. You mentioned music therapy. I know a couple of years ago we talked with Brian Harris of Med Rhythms because they're doing some really interesting work on helping people improve their gait by just pairing it with music at specific rhythms. And in Central Oregon, we've had Carol Ann Nelson on the show to talk about destination rehab, as well as we had Jeff a couple of years ago talking about the Advent chair. So there's a lot of amazing things happening in that space and specifically in your neighborhood there. So what is the relationship then between Stroke Awareness Oregon and Strength After Stroke?
Well, Strength After Stroke is my own product. It's my own program. It's what I developed. And so Strength After Stroke is a company that I founded because of all that we had talked about before that I had went through. And I was like, why isn't there something out there that helps people get through depression? Why isn't there a program that helps us navigate going through and getting that belief back in ourselves? Strength After Stroke, I started shortly after that time period where I was talking about I was going through depression. Then I asked myself the question, what am I doing here? I need to help other people because I can't be the only person going through this. And within that, then I started a program called BASE. And BASE stands for Belief, Attitude, Strength, and Energy. And so this BASE program, I wrote a big program. What I would do is I would do coaching sessions or whatever about that. And then I would have people buy the program and I would help them get through that, which wasn't very much, believe me. So once I came back to Bend and I started getting involved with Stroke Awareness Oregon, I soon had a lot of friends who were stroke survivors. One of those I met with and I said, what am I missing here? Could you please take this program? Let's go through it and tell me what you think. And so she did. And she came back to me and she said, I believe that it's too much too soon. I think that it needs to be more broken down into sections. So I took about a year and I did just that. And now it lives online and it is a compartmentalized product where you can go through and you can take each individual section a piece at a time. So there's 15 modules that live on this thing. So that's what BASE is about. The goal is just to help people regain their motivation. It's about gaining that value within themselves to know that they're going to be okay and finding that new outlet that they need and moving on in life and not giving up.
And part of that is just simply defining what does okay mean in this new life.
Great point. That's a great point.
So as you went ahead and took this coaching program and then broke it up into these online modules to make it more accessible and doable for a lot of folks, especially for a lot of folks in our community who have some of those shorter attention spans early on, or that need for more naps now, which can be a part of life, and navigating this world of fatigue and some of the other just cognitive challenges that exist. I mean, how was it you decided to split up the program and to structure it the way it is now structured?
I sent the program out and had some people challenge me on it and tell me what their thoughts were. And that's what I basically heard back, was that it was just too much too soon. It was just too much of a program to, spew onto to somebody and say, here you go. I don't know if you're probably very familiar with this, Bill, with your background and everything, but you give a program to somebody that is pretty good sized, and they can't get through it.
It can absolutely be very intimidating, and especially as we go ahead and create a thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can be proud of in creating a thing and sharing this. And we suddenly just want to share everything that we've learned with other people. And it is overwhelming to them to be hit with this tidal wave of, here is all of this awesome, amazing stuff. So getting into breaking that stuff up and figuring that out and cutting stuff out of a program or an episode or a book draft, that is hard, but it ultimately can make something so much better in the end. But it's not easy to have our ego and the value we're doing confront with the reality, because if people can't consume it, it doesn't matter how awesome it is, because you're not going to get the results.
That's exactly right. And I loved how you said all that. And so one thing that I forgot to mention is that in all of these 15 modules that are in here, there's a PDF for each one of these. So you go through, one of the, sections, I'll say, and, it talks about it and stuff. And then there's an action guide in each one of these. It's a PDF, so that you have to go through that, and then you do the work that is involved. And it's nothing too drastic. They're fairly simplistic, but they're 2-3 page PDFs. And when people go through those PDFs, that's where you're learning. That's where things start happening. You start believing in yourself. You start figuring out what your goals are again. You start, doing the work that it takes to get down that road again. And so to me, that's where my passion lies. I want to help people get that.
One of the reasons I like doing the show is I get to ask questions like that and about those things, because I'm currently working my own way through trying to write my own book, and in the middle of a particular chapter, which I realize is just turned into an absolute complete mess of just sort of brain dump of stuff. And I'm like, nobody's going to read this. So I just need to push through that and then really come back and edit strongly. And that is not easy.
Right.
So, with your experience then, with the other people you've worked with then, as somebody is thinking about, launching their own creative project in this space, what do you think aspiring creators should try to avoid doing?
Too much too soon. I feel like we all have this, we think internally. And so our internal mind is saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill this thing. I'm going to go, spew all this stuff out. I'm going to get it done in a heartbeat. And then the stroke part of us says, oh, wait a minute there, Mr. Taylor, you better go take a nap. And and you can't think like you used to. What used to take an hour now takes 3. And listen, I am a big time proponent of people to know that they can get back in the game. They can get their life back together. They can, move on and have a great life. However, Bill, there are things that happened from a stroke. And some of those things are not being able to do what you used to be able to do. And we have to sometimes come to fruition with that and realize that that is the truth. And we have to manage ourselves a little bit differently.
Very important to keep in mind. I think one of the things you also talk about there too, with that too much too soon. I think if we look at the way musicians experience that, so kids, back in the day, musicians used to release albums of 10 to 13 songs at a time, instead of just a single track to go on a Spotify playlist. And yes, I know they still do, but you'd go to get the CD or get the album or whatever. Yes, my Gen X is showing. But one of the things that would happen is that you would have a musician or a band that would have an amazing first album, and then their second album would just be mediocre.
Yeah.
Because what would happen is you would spend your entire life, 15, 20, 30 years, working on that first album. So you refined it. You got it just the way it was. And then 2 years later, you've got to come up with the second one. So your first album had decades of prep. Your second one had just a couple of years of prep because of just the way it works. And so that was the thing that happened, because you just put everything all at once, all that energy into that first thing, and then have nothing left.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
And that brings us to our hack of the week. But first, let's talk about sponsor Modus Nova. The Modus Hand and Modus Foot are AI-controlled, air-powered robotic exoskeletons that can help stroke survivors recover the use of an affected hand or foot. The user wears the device while playing video games and getting in the hundreds and thousands of repetitions they need to drive neuroplastic change in the brain. The leaderboards for the games and scoring system mean that you can see your progress happen over time. And the software keeps getting updated too, adding new games and options. To find out if Modus Nova can help you recover the use of a stroke-affected limb, visit strokecast.com/Modus Nova. Use promo code STROKECAST to save 10% off your first month. And now let's get back to our hack of the week.
One of the issues that I had and still have, frankly, is that names don't come to me. So I know people all over the place, and I may have known somebody for a long time, and yet, Bill, I will forget their name at any moment. And before, it's always been very much of an embarrassment to me. And what happens, and as a stroke survivor, and I'm sure you can agree with this, Bill, is we get upset. We immediately start thinking, oh no, I forgot their name. And we go down this rabbit hole of, oh, I forgot their name, and it'll never come back. So if you can relax yourself, and this is one thing that I'm working on currently for myself, is relax, just take some time and know that it'll be okay. Typically, the name will come to me, and it's really weird, but we all think that everyone is judging us all the time. And I like to use the analogy that you go to a grocery store and, the person in front of you is checking out and you're checking out too. And you may have a limp. You may have something on your body that shows up, and so they notice you, right? And they look at you. And what we all tend to do is we all tend to think that everybody is judging us all the time. Well, I'm here to tell you that most people are thinking about themselves most of the time. It isn't bad. I'm not disagreeing with the way it is. I'm just saying it is that way. And we have to learn that it's okay to be ourselves and to relax with that. And when you can relax with that, then things will come easier to you.
That's some great stuff in there. There's a couple things in there that I think That really resonated. First of all, I think the idea, when we talk about forgetting things, it's more and more I've realized over time that we don't forget things. What happens is the index gets scrambled so we can't find the things that are in our brains, but they're still sitting there. We just have to rebuild that index.
I love that. That was awesome.
And then the other thing, like you say, people are not judging us nearly as much as we think they are. And if you're convinced people are judging you, how many of the people around you that you saw this week do you remember? Do you remember your judgments of? I mean, you're not unique in not judging them and, focused on yourself. They're focused on themselves as well.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
And that doesn't change just because you start living life with a disability.
Exactly. That's right.
So here we are, 12 years later. Business plan, original business plan out the window. We've got this new program, working with these folks in Central Oregon, helping other survivors, building this new life, but still having a lot of these challenges and living with this and knowing that with this HHT, it's a time bomb that can go off at any time. Mm-hmm. Overall, would you say your stroke was a blessing or a curse?
It was a huge blessing for me. Yes, I think about the income. I think about the money loss. I think about my retirement. And I still think about those things, Bill. At the same time, it was a huge blessing because it has drawn out of me what I love doing, and that's helping people like crazy. And I would not give it up for anything. I know I went through, and you and all the stroke survivors out there go through the challenges that are faced. At the same time, when you go through those and you learn from them and you look at life differently, it's a blessing. And I totally believe that.
That is fantastic. So Keith, if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
Well, there's three things I'd like to offer up or give you guys. One is, strengthafterstroke.com. That's my own site, strengthafterstroke.com. Then I belong to strokeawarenessoregon.org. strokeawarenessoregon.org. It's a fantastic nonprofit organization where we help so many people. And then lastly,
and you don't have to be in Oregon to take advantage of it.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But then the last thing is just anybody can reach me anytime they'd like at Keith, it's Keith, at strengthafterstroke.com. And love to chat with anybody. And, I do help a lot of people as much as I can.
Well, fantastic. And we're going to have all those links in the show notes in your app, as well as, of course, at strokecast.com. So, Keith, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
You bet. It's been a pleasure, Bill. And I want to say thank you so much to you for what you're doing. It doesn't go unnoticed, and you're really doing a fantastic job. And I want to thank you for that.
Community is important for stroke recovery, and sponsor Like Minded can be a great resource for community. Like Minded is a nonprofit membership program that helps you live your best post-stroke life. Like Minded offers classes on everything from hand exercises to, how to tell your story. The virtual classes are led by survivors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, doctors, and more. They're held throughout the week, but if you can't attend the one you want, it's okay because members get access to the recorded version of the sessions so you can still catch up. If you have a specific question, reach out through the private text messaging group that's also part of the program. Get the support you need and deserve to live your best post-stroke life. To find out if like-minded is right for you, visit strokecast.com/like-minded. Use promo code STROKECAST to save 20% off your first month. The Pacific Northwest of the United States can be an amazing place. Between vibrant cities, struggling a bit at the moment, gorgeous nature, world-class stroke care, and a fantastic assortment of gourmet coffee, spirits, beer, pho, and sushi, we are kind of spoiled. Keith lives in Central Oregon, which is home to other Strokecast guests, like Caroline Nelson of Destination Rehab, and Jeff Babb, the inventor of the Advent Chair, allowing wheelchair users to go off-road and explore hiking trails with their friends, family, and chosen family. You'll find links to those episodes in the show notes. It is this network of folks, though, who helped me connect with Keith. One thing that jumped out at me was how similar Keith's post-stroke experience was to that of Julie Kutch from the previous episode. They both had unexpected strokes about 12 years ago, and neither had any significant rehab at the time. They were both basically just sent home and told, good luck, and left to learn everything about recovery on their own. Both descended into a life-threatening depression and had to come to terms not only with their strokes, but also with their own preconceived notions about mental health and stigma. And years later, they found themselves building new careers, helping other survivors thrive in their new worlds. The point is that even when things get really dark, there is help available. It may not seem like it. It may seem like there is nothing worth pursuing, but life can get better. Different, sure, and better. I would encourage everyone to read Will Wheaton's blog post about depression from a few years ago, because depression lies, and he does a great job of articulating that. And you can find that link in the show notes. But the point is that when you feel you can't go on, that's depression saying that, and depression lies. When you feel that you are worthless, that's depression saying that, and depression lies. When you feel the people you care about would be better off without you, that's depression saying that, and depression lies. Look, I know it's easier said than done, but don't listen to the lies of depression. Tell your doctor, your therapists, your loved ones, and get help for it, just as you get help with speech or movement or activities of daily living. Will's essay isn't specific about stroke because depression can infect anyone, just like any other disease. You can read his essay over at strokecast.com/depressionlies. And again, you'll find that link in the show notes as well. On another note, do you have or do you know anyone who experiences frequent nosebleeds? Have they been checked for HHT or hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia? Hey, I got that out. That took a few takes to actually say that, and I probably still said it wrong. But regardless, HHT is a genetic condition that can cause hemorrhagic stroke. It causes some arteries to connect directly with the veins instead of through capillaries. That results in blood under high pressure going into a place not designed to handle that pressure. Leaks will happen, and when they happen in the nose, they're annoying. When they happen in the brain, they're deadly. Nosebleeds, in my case, weren't due to HHT. They were due to high blood pressure. In both my case and Keith's, nosebleeds were an early warning of the conditions that would ultimately lead to our strokes. So, take your nosebleeds seriously. To learn more about Keith and the work he does with Stroke Awareness Oregon and Strength After Stroke, check out the show notes or visit strokecast.com/Keith. Share this episode with someone you know by giving them the link, strokecast.com/Keith. Subscribe to the free Strokecast newsletter at strokecast.com/news. And, of course, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe. and I'll talk to you soon.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.